Some betrayals arrive like a storm, loud, visible, impossible to ignore. But the ones that break you quietly, the ones carried out with care, with calculation, with love still on the face, those are the ones you never fully recover from. Diana Clarke was 43 years old. She had built a quiet, solid life. And for 9 days, everyone who knew her believed she was dying. Her doctors believed it. Her friends believed it. Her sister believed it. But only one of them, only one person who claimed to love her, used those 9 days to start dismantling the life Diana had spent 20 years building, piece by piece, room by room, in silence, while Diana was still breathing. This is not a story about illness. This is a story about what lives inside people, hidden, patient, quiet, until the moment arrives that gives it permission to move. And it is a story about the conversations we never have with the people we love most, and what happens when the silence runs out of room. Welcome to the Unspoken chapter, where we don't just tell you what happened, we tell you the part no one ever says out loud. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a chapter. Diana Clarke didn't come from money. She came from discipline. She grew up in a working-class household in Manchester, the kind of home where nothing was wasted, where you learned early, very early, that security wasn't given. It was built, brick by brick, decision by decision, year by patient year. By 43, she owned her home outright, a modest, elegant, semi-detached in a quiet part of the city. Every room considered, every piece of furniture chosen with intention. Nothing extravagant, everything earned. She ran a small financial consulting firm from her home office, efficient, respected, precise. Her clients trusted her because she never gambled with their futures. She didn't believe in shortcuts. She believed in structure, in showing up, in doing the thing properly even when no one was watching. And for 20 years, 2 full decades of adult life, that belief had held her steady, until her body began to quietly, persistently disagree. It didn't announce itself. That's what made it frightening. Danger that arrives loudly gives you a chance to brace. This came in whispers. First, exhaustion. Not the honest tiredness that follows a long day. The other kind. The kind that sleep cannot reach. The kind that sits in your bones and greets you the same way every morning, no matter how long you rested. Then the weight loss. Gradual at first. The kind you notice only in photographs, in the way your clothes begin to fit differently. Then visible. Then impossible to explain away. Then the dizziness. Brief episodes. A slight tilt in the room. A moment where the world shifted just enough to remind her, something is not right. Diana managed it the way she managed everything. She kept working. She kept showing up. She told herself it was stress, that it would pass, that she just needed rest. She was wrong. One afternoon, in her home office, in the middle of a client call, her body made its own decision. She collapsed. And the life she had built so carefully suddenly felt very, very fragile. Hospitals have a particular quality. They strip everything down. Outside those walls, you are a professional, a sister, a friend, a person with plans and routines and a future. Inside, you are a patient, waiting, uncertain, afraid in ways you cannot fully articulate. Diana sat across from Dr. Jonas Yessers. She watched his face carefully, the way she watched everything, looking for what wasn't being said, because she had spent her career reading between numbers. She knew that what was omitted was often more important than what was stated. There are abnormalities in your blood results, he said, significant ones. He didn't say the word. He didn't need to. Further tests were ordered, specialist referrals, monitoring. Then came the sentence that changed the air in the room. I think it would be wise to have someone close to you aware of the situation. Diana understood immediately. Doctors don't say that to reassure you. They say it because what's coming may be too heavy to carry alone. She drove home by herself that evening. She sat in the driveway for a long time before she went inside, and then she made 3 calls. The first was to Amara Bennett. Amara was Diana's closest friend, measured, sharp, emotionally precise, the kind of woman who doesn't fill silence with noise just to make you feel better. She listened without interrupting. Then she said, "Let's not let uncertainty write a story that facts haven't confirmed yet." 5 words, enough to hold on to. The second call was to Marcus Hale, a colleague who had become quietly essential to Diana's life over the years. Marcus didn't ask many questions, didn't arrive with speeches or advice. He showed up that evening with food she hadn't asked for, and stayed. Quiet presence, no performance. Sometimes that is the whole thing. The third call was the hardest. She called her sister. Her name was Diana Clarke, 5 years younger, same childhood, same parents, same starting line, different everything else. Where Diana built, Vanessa drifted. Where Diana planned, Vanessa reacted. Where Diana saved, Vanessa spent. And for years, those differences had lived quietly between them. Not as arguments, not as confrontations, as something more corrosive, unspoken comparison. Vanessa had watched her older sister's life take shape, the house, the business, the stability, with a feeling she never named out loud. Not quite envy, something more complicated than that. The ache of wanting something and not understanding why you don't have it, and needing, somewhere deep and unacknowledged, someone to blame for the distance between the life you imagined and the life you're living. Diana was the easiest answer. Not because Diana had done anything wrong, but because Diana was there. And Diana had what Vanessa didn't. None of this was ever spoken. In their family, as in so many families, you kept the peace. You smoothed the difficult things over. You showed up at Christmas and smiled, and kept the hard truths buried beneath the ordinary ones. Vanessa loved her sister. That is the part that makes this story so hard to hold. She genuinely, completely loved her. And she still did what she did. Because love, when it shares space with years of silent resentment, is not always enough to stop us. Vanessa came quickly. She arrived with tears and open arms. She sat beside Diana, held her hand, said all the right things. And for a moment, despite everything Diana was carrying, she felt less alone. That is the cruelty of it. But Diana, even frightened, even exhausted, noticed something. Something small, something she couldn't name immediately. When Vanessa moved through the rooms of the house, her eyes didn't rest the way a visitor's eyes rest. They moved. Not with curiosity, not with grief, with inventory. Diana noticed, filed it, told herself she was imagining things. She almost believed it. The test results would take days, and during those days, Vanessa began asking questions. Gently, carefully spaced, never overwhelming. Do you have a will in place? Where do you keep your important documents? What happens with your clients if you can't work for a while? Reasonable questions, the kind a concerned sister would ask. Diana answered, because fear opens you. Because when you believe your time may be limited, you stop guarding doors you normally keep closed. You let people in. You trust. Diana answered because Vanessa was her sister, the one person in the world who shared her history, her parents, her name. So she mentioned the will. She mentioned where the documents were kept. She mentioned the spare key with her neighbor Carol. She answered every question because she believed Vanessa was asking out of love. She didn't yet understand that some questions are not asked to comfort. They are asked to prepare. Time and uncertainty moves differently. It stretches. Every hour waited. Every morning a negotiation between hope and fear. Diana worked when she could, rested when she had to, held herself together with the same discipline that had always held her. Amara called every single day, sometimes just to check in, sometimes just to sit on the phone in comfortable silence, because she understood that sometimes the loneliness is the hardest part. Marcus sent food twice more. Vanessa visited regularly, and during those visits, Diana began to notice something she couldn't immediately explain. Vanessa's presence had a texture to it that didn't feel entirely like grief. She was attentive. She was caring. She was everything a sister should be on the surface. But underneath, something hummed. A quiet urgency, like someone running a clock Diana couldn't see. On the 9th day, the phone rang. Diana stood completely still as she answered. Dr. Yesser's voice was different. She noticed it immediately. The careful, measured tone was gone, replaced by something lighter, something she identified after a moment as relief. "Mrs. Clarke," he said, "I have your results, and I want to begin by telling you this is good news, genuinely good news, but I owe you an explanation." There had been an error, a laboratory contamination. Her initial blood work had been corrupted during processing, producing markers that mimicked something serious but reflected nothing real in her body. The follow-up panel was clear. The biopsy, clean. Diana's actual condition, severe iron deficiency, chronic exhaustion, hormonal imbalance. Serious enough to treat, but manageable. Temporary, completely, routinely treatable. "You are going to be fine," Dr. Yesser said. And Diana Clarke stood in her kitchen, the room she had chosen herself, in the home she had earned herself. And for the first time in 9 days, she breathed fully. She called Amara. Tears, relief, laughter through the tears. She called Marcus. Quiet, warm, steady, just like him. And then she made a decision. She would not call Vanessa over the phone. She wanted to see her face, to share that moment in person, to feel it together, the lifting of 9 terrible days. But before she could leave the house, something stopped her. The shelf beside the front door. She looked at it, and in the way that the mind sometimes registers absence before the eyes fully confirm it, she knew. Something was missing. She stood there for just a moment, and then she walked through her house slowly, the way you walk when you already suspect what you're going to find. The sitting room, her mother's antique writing desk, the one that had sat in that corner for 7 years, the one Diana had wrapped in blankets when she moved it from her childhood home because she couldn't bear to see it damaged. Gone. The hallway, 2 framed prints she had chosen on a trip to Edinburgh. Small, personal, not expensive, but hers. Gone. The spare bedroom, the mahogany wardrobe, solid, beautiful, bought at an estate sale the year she moved in, replaced by a flat-pack unit she had never seen before. Her dressing table, the jewelry box, opened. The pearl earrings her mother had left to her by name, specifically in a handwritten note tucked into the will. Gone. And then, the garage, her second car, the reliable, steady car she kept for her daughter's visits home. Gone. In its place, a post-it note. In Vanessa's handwriting. Taken for safekeeping. Will explain. Diana stood in her own garage and read those 5 words 3 times, and understood, with the particular clarity of someone whose world has just been completely reframed, that her sister had not been grieving. Her sister had been preparing. If you walk through your home today and realize that someone you trusted had been quietly removing pieces of your life, what would your very first instinct be? Confrontation? Investigation? Silence? Tell us in the comments, because how we answer that question says more about what we've survived than we might want to admit. Diana did not scream. She did not call Vanessa in rage. She did not fall apart on the garage floor. She called Amara. "I need you to come. Bring your camera. Don't ask me why yet." Amara came within the hour. Together they moved through every room, photographing every empty space, every disturbed drawer, every surface that held the ghost of something now gone. Then Diana called her bank. 3 years earlier, during a minor procedure, she had added Vanessa as an emergency contact on one of her savings accounts. She had never removed her, because she had never needed to, because she had trusted her. In the 9 days between the diagnosis call and the results, that account had been accessed. 2 withdrawals, made in person, at a branch 40 minutes from Manchester, far enough to feel deliberate. Combined total, £9,400. Diana sat with that number for a long moment. Then she called her solicitor. And she did not contact Vanessa until she was ready. She didn't confront her in anger. She invited her to dinner, the same Italian restaurant they had been going to since their 20s. Familiar ground, a place layered with 30 years of ordinary memories. Vanessa arrived warm. She hugged Diana, said she looked better, said she was so grateful, so relieved. They ordered. They talked about small things. And then Diana set down her fork. "Vanessa," she said quietly, "I need to talk to you about the house." The table went very still. Diana didn't raise her voice. She listed what she knew. The desk, the prints, the wardrobe, the earrings, the car, the £9,400. "I was keeping things safe," Vanessa started. "You sold them, Vanessa." "I know what you thought," Diana said. "You thought I was dying, and you decided not to wait." The words landed. Vanessa's eyes filled. Real tears. That was the part that made it complicated. They were completely real. "I owe money," Vanessa whispered. "I've owed money for so long. I told myself, if the worst happened, that you wouldn't—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Need them anymore," Diana said. Silence. "Mum left those earrings to me by name. You were in the room when the will was read. You heard it." "I know," Vanessa said. And she did. She had always known. Diana drove home from that restaurant alone. She had said everything she needed to say. Clearly, calmly, without raising her voice once. And now, in the quiet of the car, with no one watching, no one to be composed for, she let herself feel it. Not anger, grief, because the woman sitting across that table, crying those real tears, was still her sister, was still the little girl who used to climb into her bed during thunderstorms, was still the person she had called first, before Amara, before Marcus, when her own body had started failing her. Because even knowing everything, even holding every receipt and record and bank statement, Diana had still called Vanessa first. That was the part she sat with in the dark of the car outside her own home. Not what Vanessa had done, but what it meant that Diana had loved her anyway. And what it costs, quietly, permanently, to love someone clearly for the very first time. This is the part most stories skip, because it is easier to call someone a villain than to understand how they got there. Vanessa Clarke did not become this person in 9 days. She had been becoming this person over 30 years of silence, 30 years of debt she was too proud to name, 30 years of watching her sister build what she couldn't, 30 years of nodding at Christmas, saying, "I'm fine," and meaning something entirely different. She had never said, "I feel like I'm disappearing next to you." She had never said, "I needed more than anyone gave me, and I didn't know how to ask." She had never said, "Every time someone praises your life, I feel smaller in my own." She said none of it, and so it came out sideways, in the worst possible way, at the worst possible time. In the space that fear created, when death felt close and consequences felt distant, everything she had never said became something she did. And that is the real story. Not the missing car, not the empty jewelry box, not even the £9,000. The real story is what happens in families when we stop telling the truth to each other. When we keep the peace instead of keeping the relationship. When we let things go unspoken year after year and tell ourselves that silence is the same as kindness. It isn't. Silence is a debt, and eventually, one way or another, it gets collected. Diana's solicitor handled everything with precision and without cruelty. The car was recovered, the listing was still active. A single formal letter was enough. The writing desk was found at a local antique dealer and bought back for £200 more than Vanessa had sold it for. Diana paid the difference without complaint. The pearl earrings were gone. No buyer was ever traced. Their assessed value was included in the settlement, but a number on a page is not your mother's jewelry. Diana knew that, and she grieved it separately from everything else, quietly, on her own terms. Vanessa repaid the full amount over 19 months. She didn't contest the claim. She couldn't. The documentation was complete. They speak now, occasionally, birthdays, a brief call at Christmas. There is civility. There is even, sometimes, something that feels like the shadow of what they used to be. But the sisterhood, the real thing, the 30 years of ordinary closeness, that lives somewhere else now. Somewhere neither of them can fully reach. People ask Diana if she has forgiven her sister. It is always the first question, as if forgiveness is the required ending, the tidy resolution this kind of story demands. Diana's answer is careful. I understand her better than I did before. I understand she was drowning in ways she never showed me, partly because she hid it, and partly because I didn't look closely enough. I understand that she made a terrible decision in the space where fear and need overlap. But understanding someone is not the same as returning to what you were. Trust, when it breaks in that particular way, not in a moment of anger, not in a single impulsive mistake, but in a deliberate choice made over multiple days by someone looking you in the face. That kind of trust doesn't simply repair. She pauses. Then she says the most important part. The betrayal didn't begin when she took my things. It began the first time she felt something painful and chose silence instead. And so did mine. I saw the distance growing between us and I told myself it was just life, just the way people drift. I kept the peace, and keeping the peace cost us everything. Diana Clarke didn't almost die, but something did. The version of her sister she had believed in, the silence she had confused for stability, the peace she had maintained at the price of truth. And maybe that is the final unspoken chapter, the one that doesn't belong just to Diana, the one that belongs to all of us. We are so afraid of the conversations that might hurt that we avoid them. Year after year, we let things go unsaid. We let distance grow. We mistake silence for peace and call it love. But silence isn't peace. It's just pain with better manners. And one day, in a moment we never anticipated, it finds its way out. Sometimes in an argument, sometimes in years of quiet drifting, and sometimes in someone standing in a house that doesn't belong to them, deciding what to take before the person it belongs to has finished living. Diana is fine now. Her health is managed. Her home is restored. Her business continues. She tends the things she built with the same quiet discipline that built them in the first place. And sometimes in the evenings, she sits beside her mother's writing desk, the one that came back, and she thinks about all the things that were never said. By Vanessa, by herself, by the family that taught them both that keeping quiet was the same as keeping together. It wasn't. It never is. If something in Diana's story felt familiar to you, if you've ever kept the peace at the cost of the truth, if you've ever watched a distance grow between yourself and someone you love and called it just life, tell us in the comments. Not to perform it, not to be judged, but because someone watching this right now needs to know they are not alone in it. Give this video a like if the unspoken chapter spoke to something real in you. And subscribe, because every week we come back to the stories that live beneath the surface. The ones people carry quietly, the ones that don't make noise, the ones that matter most. From all of us, the truth isn't always spoken, but it is always there. And so are we. We'll see you in the next chapter.